Hello and welcome to the Outdoorsy Educator podcast, where stories become lessons and every journey has something to teach us. Every week I sit down with people from all walks of life to hear their adventures, explore their experiences, and uncover the insights that have shaped them along the way. Whether it's from the outdoors, the classroom, or any other path, each conversation offers a fresh perspective on learning, growth, and what it means to truly connect with the world and the people around us. And on this week's episode of the Outdoorsy Educator podcast, we have Rachel Smith. Rachel, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh no, we appreciate you and your time. Why don't you tell the audience a little bit about who you are?
Sure. I am a nurse practitioner. I own my own practice and I specialize in longevity medicine with my patients. I'm also a wife and a mom and traveler. I'm a writer. I'm a speaker. I'm a private pilot. So I wear lots of different hats and that keeps me engaged and excited.
Hence the planes over your shoulder in your
Yes.
office.
Well, those are not all mine, but my husband's
Right.
also a pilot. He's a commercial pilot, so those are
Ah,
his bad boys.
those are his. Well, that's kind of exciting. Yeah, I just got back from a long plane journey on Friday. Long for me, but I go home back to Scotland every year, and it's about little over 10 hours usually on the way back. And at that point, I'm ready to not be on a plane again for a little while.
I hear you.
Yeah, it's good to, but we came across each other online, and when you talked about sort of longevity and just overall wellness in general, that of course took me in my mind to educators that I work with, and we've heard about it. It's probably been since teaching began, educator burnout, people not really taking care of themselves first and foremost. And I just thought it could be a really interesting discussion because we see so many health education professionals who feel exhausted, despite the fact we have more access to more medical information than ever before. And I was curious as to your take on what you see. We have, yeah, more medicinal breakthroughs. We can go to the doctor and find out all these things about ourselves through various tests, and yet so many of us are still struggling. And I was curious as to your perspective on that.
I think it's multifactorial. And,
Okay.
and so I'll talk about it in a couple of different layers. We do have access to so much information. And the way that we have access to that information through online resources and, Dr. Google for lots of us, or some influencer that we're following on Instagram or TikTok, puts us in the driver's seat for our health, which in many ways is the right place for us to be. However, it's a different dynamic and a different power dynamic than it has been in the past when it comes to healthcare. It seems to me that very much so in the past, we would go to the doctor and we would follow the doctor's advice, whatever
Right.
that advice might be. And that was
Yes.
the only access we had to information about what we ought to be doing differently than what we were currently doing. Now that we have all that information, many, many people are sort of taking a DIY approach to their health care, which just adds another level of responsibility on top of every other hat that we're wearing. So I think that that's part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Unless we're trained in navigating medical research and kind of unwrapping those studies that are perhaps mentioned or perhaps not even mentioned by the
Right.
Instagram influencer, we may not know whether this applies to us, whether there's any validity to it. But everything about social media and the way programs and solutions are sold to us is by creating a sense of fear first. So they first ignite your fear and then they sell you the solution. So that's, I think,
Yes.
wrapped up in this access to information that we all have. which is tied into the flip side of this coin. And I think where so much of our burnout comes from, no matter what field we find ourselves engaged in, whatever our career path is, because we have so much information, so much digital stimuli
Hmm.
coming at us constantly. We all live with our phone ever ready. I silenced it for this, but it's there,
It's there. Mine is over here too. Yep.
right? And meanwhile, I've got Claude working on several projects in the background, while I'm doing this. So we are touched by technology constantly. We wear our digital trackers to sleep and we check that data first thing in the morning. This is good and bad.
Right. I think that's the key, right? I mean, all this technology and access to information has a lot of positives, but it can also be a bit scary. And I love the fact that you said, or you really alluded to the fact that a lot of the times problems have to be created to market and sell solutions. And I think we see that in health. I think we see it in politics, in with social issues across the board. People can't sell their ideas unless there's something to be scared of.
It's true.
Yeah, that's really
Marketing
interesting.
101.
Right. Yeah, yeah, you got to create the problem, create an enemy, whether that's somebody or a fear of something. Absolutely. And so if you could dive into what it is you do a little more as a nurse practitioner, do you have people that come in and they've already, and I may be completely wrong here, this is just my curiosity, and they've almost self-diagnosed, or they've been looking things up, so they've already decided it must be this, it must be that, and you have to navigate that conversation with your medical expertise.
Yes, that is a conversation I have on repeat multiple times a day because
Interesting.
nobody comes in having not already run their symptoms through chat.
Right.
And the reality of that is I also am going to run their symptoms through chat because I want to know what chat told them. So I'm
Interesting.
prepared to answer specifically what they think they already know, right? Because they think they've done their research. In fact, they'll tell me, I've done my research, which is great
Right.
and kind of challenging at the same time. So yes, in the work that I do, sometimes people come in having absolutely done a lot of looking into it on their own, one way or another, and or been to lots of other practitioners and maybe not been given the answers that they felt were adequate to explain what they were experiencing. And so the scope of my work in a practice that's focused on longevity is let's take you where you are, evaluate any gaps in your health, physical, emotional. Let's look at the blood work. Let's look at your nutrition, your lifestyle, your stress, your sleep, your exercise. And then let's project out 10, 20 years and see, what are what's the burden of risk and how can
Mhm.
we decrease that? What does that look like in a very individualized way? Following the science, so as much as possible, not guessing, not blindly,
Right.
throwing it, a dart at a dartboard, but following the science, but individualizing it for that person and what their life looks like, what's actually doable for them, actually workable.
That's
We put together a plan.
that's sounds like a very healthy approach. When I was looking into, who you are and what it is you do, I've noticed that you've particularly embraced the outdoors, activities like running, kayaking, cycling, mountain biking. And, even me, somebody not in medicine at all, would know that obviously these things are good for, blood pressure or weight loss. But I was curious to what these activities might have taught you about yourself and your health that might not be captured on, let's say, a fitness tracker or a lab test.
So the activities that you just listed were more adventure, well, like mountain biking, for example. Even road cycling can be um, quite an endurance feat, depending on how you approach it. I
Hmm.
once rode Ragbri, which is a 500-mile bike ride across the state of Iowa
A
that
fr
takes place
That's
annually each week.
on my radar. I've got a friend who's done it. I don't know if he does it annually, but he's done it quite a few times, and every year he that rope for pulling me onto going to Ragbag comes gets a little
There
shorter.
you go. Yeah, it was
Yes.
great fun. I would encourage you to do it. I felt that I had trained adequately. Maybe, we could always be better trained, of course,
Of
but I
course.
put in the miles in the 6 months preceding Ragbri. What I hadn't adequately sorted through was how to hydrate and manage electrolytes. So I ended up with so much fluid retention at the end of the week. I was kind of a mess. But in any event, what those types of outdoor activities teach me about myself, whether it's mountain biking or just a really long, grueling bike ride, is what I'm capable of and what I'm still
Hmm.
capable of. Even when I'm not necessarily feeling it, when I push through and get to the end, that I at 55 years old, I can still do these things. And
Right.
even, when it was something I was doing 15 years ago, that it was something, this is hard and it will be hard, but I will get through it. And that I can do hard things. I mean, that's so basic. And yet what that teaches us, what that gives us as a lifelong skill of resilience is irreplaceable.
Absolutely. I think that resilience is a theme that has come up time and time and time again when I've interviewed people. And when people who can they're able to build that resilience and there's almost nothing they can't do. It's a wonderful thing to witness. I've seen it in friends and yeah, it's truly remarkable what people can achieve when they commit to doing it and putting themselves in a mental headspace to be able to do it.
For sure. And, you know, doing the prep work in advance physically is one thing, and surrounding yourself with people who believe that you can do it, support you in attempting it, and will go do it with you, right? This building a community that wants to do those same things is huge.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, finding your people
Finding your people.
is huge. I mean, I've found that in the hiking community, I do quite a lot of hiking, and doing it with your people and your little tribe of people going up the mountain, it gives you an extra boost, which is mental, but it feels physical.
It does. It does.
Yeah, it's been
And
a
we've
bit.
only really begun to talk about the kind of the hard stuff that we do outdoors. But what about just going and sitting by the river or taking a walk after dinner and watching the sunset? Like how glorious and amazing is that?
That was literally, I've got a little list of questions that wherever the conversation took us, I wanted to ask you. And one of those was about misconceptions about time being spent outdoors. Again, like I'm not somebody who's really built for running, never have been. It's not something I particularly enjoy. So I kind of, all right, well, then I can't do A, B, C, these outdoor things. But I found other things. So I was curious about misconceptions about what people think they need to do if they're spending time outdoors, or things they may overlook that actually have huge health benefits.
Right.
I'd love for you to talk. You just mentioned it a little bit, but I'd love for you to talk about that.
Sure. I mean, if we're going to use outdoor activity as a venue for exercise, like physical activity that's going to improve our strength or cardiorespiratory fitness, that's one avenue. And you just choose what you love. And for some people, that they start with walking because that's where they're at, and maybe it never progresses more than that. Some people aren't built for running. You're exactly correct on that. But you find what will keep drawing you back and you do that. But if it's not exercise, there are still demonstrated health benefits for being outdoors. And I don't even know if we understand why nature therapy works, except,
Right.
I mean, there are clues that we have, and we think maybe it's something to do with vitamin D and sunlight exposure. Maybe it's something to do with our circadian rhythm and being outdoors as the sun is rising and then seeing it set at the end of the day. But it's inarguable that
Mhm.
we receive benefits in so many different areas, physical and emotional, psychological, spiritual benefits when we spend time outdoors, especially if it's a natural setting outdoors.
As I've spoken to, and I know this is a slightly different field, of course, but I've spoken to several counselors and therapists over the years, and I've definitely seen an uptick and a trend in their work of instead of sitting in an office across the table from each other and let's start our hour, they're actually going for a walk for their session and talking about whatever it is they're going to talk. And again, this is my, non-professional opinion, of course. What I'm hearing is it's very exciting. There's wonderful breakthroughs happening. It really seems to be a thing that is gaining a bit of traction.
I love it. I love it. I have a colleague who does some work with my patients. She's a health coach. And that's one thing she offers to her health coaching clients is let's meet and we'll do the coaching session while we walk the river walk. It's it's amazing.
Yeah, something I never thought about, but a friend who does this told me was the ease in which nature provides metaphors that can be used to help with the therapy. Seasonal changes, things going dormant and coming back to life, how everything feeds off each other, the cycle, and all of these things can be used to help understand whatever issues it is the person may be having. And it's so simple. It's so simple, but it's so brilliant as well.
Absolutely. I love that. Yeah, I mean, who doesn't reach for a mountain climbing metaphor when you're talking about any hard thing that lies ahead, right? How do you prepare to climb to the top of a mountain? You don't just take off. You have a plan and you pack your bag and you plan your meals and you find a guide.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's undoubtedly a good thing spending this time outdoors. And obviously I work in education and I've been thinking about this and I've yet to do it much research into it. But most educators spend their days indoors, they're under artificial lights. And I was curious if you were aware of any research or what the research may tell us about the impact of natural light and outdoor exposure on things like mood and sleep and just overall health. When so many of us, and again, I just think about teachers a lot, but so many of us are stuck under artificial lights in an office, into our car, into our homes, and
Right.
that's our daily routine.
Right. So I'm not going to speak to the things that I don't know, but
Right.
I can guess about those things. There is a lot of research that demonstrates the benefits of nature therapy, spending time outdoors. I think in any capacity, even, people talk about like grounding, like being outside barefoot. I don't
Mm.
know how much that's woo-woo stuff, but to me, like if you're outside, you're going to get some benefit. I don't care if you're barefoot or
Right,
not. If you
right.
want to be barefoot, be barefoot. But definitely the nature therapy studies are looking at those outcomes, in particular mood and cognition and sleep, stress management. So those are some of the major things that they are exploring. So it doesn't surprise me. And I don't know if it's a positive benefit that when you're spending time outside, you're getting something specifically from that, or when you're spending time outside, you're not being exposed to the artificial light inside, right? You'd have to look at both sides of it if you
Very
were going to do
interesting.
it in a
Yes.
scientific way.
Yeah, that's a very good point. It's not just what you're gaining outdoors, but what are you avoiding
Right.
indoors? I'd never really
Right.
thought about it that way. That's very interesting. Um, I'm not sure what state it is. I feel like it's Washington, might be Oregon, and I'm probably wrong. But I've noticed that medical doctors in one of those states, I'm sure, can now actually prescribe outdoor time where they can. And I didn't know if you'd ever heard of that. I was curious about the role that nature does play in what you do specifically and how you can utilize it.
Sure. I have heard of that, but what I don't know is what that means.
Mm.
If the state of Washington has said that prescribers can prescribe outdoor therapy, what does that mean? Does that mean it's reimbursed in some way, that insurance will cover it, or that an employer
Right.
has to honor that time. I don't know the details about that, but I do definitely talk about the benefits of being outdoors to my patients, whether we're talking about stress management or improving their sleep. So I talk about morning sunlight exposure and evening sunlight exposure as well. And then when we're talking about exercise, I usually will talk to them about like, okay, let's do what we can do. And if that means that you have a walking pad under your desk, that's great. You'll increase steps. You just get an additive benefit if you do those steps outdoors. I want you to do them no
Mm.
matter what. But if you do them outdoors, you also get nature and birds and clouds and sunshine.
Yeah, there's so many layers to this. I was just thinking about what you said about grounding, because I suppose there could be, or may not be, medical research showing it does or does not benefit. But if it makes you feel better, it's well, almost like a placebo effect. This is
Right. I'll
all
take it.
good. Yes, all these different angles and levels and layers to it. I find very interesting. So as we kind of come round the bend here to the home stretch, I do have three questions I wanted to ask you. Um, I like to think about the word success quite a lot because it's changed a lot throughout my life. What being successful means, achieving goals. They've changed over the years, of course. But I was curious how you might define success and how it has changed, if indeed it has, um, through your experience in the medical field.
Wow, success, I feel, is kind of a loaded word because
Right.
it seems to me that it's very wrapped up in what other people think about us, as opposed to how we actually value our own life and our own lived experience.
Yes.
So, where have I come to with that? What I have seen a pattern of my own behavior in life is constantly going for the next thing. So I've sort of lived my life as a very driven individual, multiple degrees. If there's a certification, I'm going to get it. If I'm going to take up scuba diving, then I'm going to go get the next certification, right? It's always the next thing. And yet what I know more and more the older I get is that those letters after my name, those certifications
Hmm.
mean less and less. And
Yes.
how do you feel when you're around me? How do I make you feel? We've heard this before, right? Nobody
Right.
remembers, what you did for a living or necessarily anything else about you except how you made them feel. So
Yep. It's
I
the
think
same with
that,
we deal with that with elementary school students all the time. When we think back to our young school days, we don't know which teacher taught us what necessarily, but we, as you said, and I apologize for interrupting you, it's always how they make us feel.
yes.
Always. Yeah, it's a sort of almost a universal truth. I think that's what we remember the most. I can see behind you, you've got a large array of books, but I was curious as to what book has been particularly impactful on your life. And this could be a couple of different books, might not be your favorite book, but just something that has had a lasting impact on your life. And this is often a question. I always ask three questions at the end of every podcast, and this one always seems to be the trickiest or has moments of pause.
Sure, and I can see why because I've been
Hmm.
a lifelong reader and I want to just like dive back to my childhood and find the one series that somehow in fact I think I will because there's something about the Anne of Green Gables books
Hmm.
from my childhood that in a way, like told me as a kid that that there was some kinship in the world, that if I was a little bit different than the other kids in school, that's okay because there were other people like me. I wasn't alone in the world.
I love that. Again, all about how it makes you feel, isn't
Yes.
it? I love the Anne of Green Gables. My last question for you is, and I try to customize this question a bit for each guest. You're thinking about taking your plane up in the air for a day. Who would you choose? And this could be somebody dead, alive, famous, not famous, somebody you know, somebody you've never met. Who would you like to take up in a plane for a day, to go with you, and you just get to pick their brains and talk to them as you're soaring through the sky?
Yes, this is easy because I just got done reading um, a memoir that Amelia Earhart had written. And
Ah,
I've been interested in aviation since I was 14. I don't think I ever realized that she had written a book, but somebody gifted it to me recently and I
I
just read
didn't
it.
know.
Um, I would, yeah, Amelia Earhart. She was one badass woman, and the kind of flying that they were doing when she was flying was crazy. I'm gonna go off just a little bit here.
Please, please.
It was an era where somebody had just invented what became the modern day helicopter. They had a different name for it.
Mhm.
And she had never even seen one, but then she had the opportunity to go up in one with a pilot who took her up. They spent about 15 minutes in the air. They landed, and then he said, "Now it's your turn. Go up."
Wow.
Flight training.
Right?
See one, do one. Yeah, crazy that she would just set off on these cross-country flights, and it was so common that you might just have to put your plane down somewhere because something was going wrong. I mean, there were far more open fields at the time, so it was much less of a big deal. But having an off-field landing was something that pilots had on the regular back when she was flying, and that to
Right.
me is just like a whole different world. So I would love that opportunity.
Yeah, how did we not know she wrote a book? Like I didn't know that till right now. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I will need to pick up a copy of that. I have a lot more questions for you, but I want to be very respectful of your time. But how can other people find you? What's the best way to get in touch with you? I'm sure we'll have listeners who have questions about what you do.
Sure. Probably easiest to find me on Instagram or LinkedIn at Rachel Smith DNP.
Rachel Smith, DNP. Awesome. Well, I'll make sure we link to that when this episode goes out. But Rachel, I cannot thank you enough for your time. This has been a fascinating conversation, and thank you again so much for doing what you do and spending this time with me today.
It's been a lot of fun. Thank you for having me.
Thank you again to this week's guest, and I hope today's episode was as enjoyable for you as it was for me, and perhaps even inspired your next adventure. If you did enjoy the show, please be sure to subscribe, leave a review, or follow us wherever you get your podcasts. You can find more information at theoutdoorseyeducator.com or follow us on Instagram, TikTok, or Facebook. Until next time, thank you so much for listening to the Outdoorsy Educator podcast.